Hey everyone, welcome back to the Jody Watkins Show. Today, my guest is the amazing Sarah Wilson. Yay!
Hello, hello.
She is the CEO of, what is it?
Everything's Messy podcast and Everything's Messy wellness.
Yes. I wanted to make you say it because
Yeah.
I think it's awesome. So when I saw what she was doing, you guys, I was just like, oh my gosh, I got to talk to her because, I was telling her, I was like, my therapist always says messy health. And that's what we talk about all the time. And life is messy. It's never going to just be one thing or the other. We want it to look all pretty, but it's never pretty. And
Yeah.
so I
Thanks,
really
Instagram, for
just
that.
Right? I know. I know. That's why I said social media is the highlight reel. We're not doing that. We are we are getting to the nitty-gritty today, you guys. She has an amazing story just from what I've seen so far. We all have one, and so I'm grateful for the opportunity to share hers today. So, Sarah, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking the time out. I
Yes. Thank
appreciate
you so
you.
much for having me. This is great to be here. I'm very
Of
excited to be
course, of
here.
course. So let's talk a little bit. Usually I have people kind of start out, how was your upbringing? How did that flow into adult life? And how did that flow into what you're doing now?
Yeah. Well, like we said, it's all messy, right?
It is. Yes.
Long story long. Let's see. uh 15 years old, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and it was by being kicked by a horse that they found it. I didn't know that I was sick. I was probably 80 pounds soaking wet at the time, but I was a teenager. I didn't think that that was anything wrong with that. I was fine. I was working in a two-story restaurant at the time, so running up and down the stairs, I just thought, hey, that's par for the course. Started drinking tons of water, and so I thought, okay, well, I'm dehydrated because I'm running up the stairs. So there was that. And then using the restroom, every 10 seconds seemed like I needed to go, and I was like, oh, it's because I'm drinking all this water.
Well,
It
type
didn't.
1 is inherited, right? So did anyone else in your family you did
Type 1 is not
what?
inherited. Type 1 is not inherited. You can have
It
some family members that
usually
have
is.
it,
Yeah, it
but
usually
there is
is.
no one in my family that has it. No one that has type
Wow.
1 or type 2. So,
Okay.
and the more that they learn about it, yes, there are some families that are predisposed to it, but it doesn't necessarily you're going to inherit it. So it's just one of those anomalies. They still don't know what causes it. It's just one of those weird, funky things that decide. It can start from a virus.
Mhm.
So thinking back, maybe there was a virus I had and it starts to attack the beta cells, and it's just this process. But yeah, I was 15. And like I said,
Wow.
I wasn't in pain. There was nothing that I could complain about. And so it just didn't dawn on me to say, hey, maybe I need to see a doctor or something. Didn't even dawn
Yeah.
on me. So divine intervention completely. God was
Definitely.
like,
Yeah, because like I said, I mean, you're the literally, I mean, I know a lot of people with type 1, type 2, like I've been in the medical field and things like that. And I'm like, you're really the first case. That's why I asked that, because you're the first person I've ever had say, no, no one else has it. Because
no
everybody else
one.
I knew, like either their mom or their dad or, somebody. And I'm just like, okay, that makes sense. But wow.
Yeah.
So
I drew the short straw.
15. Oh my gosh. So how did that change your life? I mean, it's gotta be kinda
Completely.
good at the same time though, because maybe then you were like, "Okay, now I know at least what's causing all this stuff?"
You would think.
Okay.
But being a 15-year-old teenager who was sort of rebellious at the time
Mm,
anyway, was in complete denial. There's nothing wrong with me. What are you talking about? As
that's
after I
true.
got
I have an
kicked by
almost
the
15-year-old now, so yeah,
yeah.
I think about that, yes.
Well, and so I really think God was like, I need to get her attention somehow, because otherwise there's
Mhm.
going to be no way she's going to understand this. So enter the horse. And as I end up in the emergency room and they go to check they do all the vital checks and
Right.
everything. And the first thing they do is bring out the glucometer and check my blood sugar. And the nurse thought it was broken because it wasn't registering. So their number in the hospital, it only goes to 500. She thought it was broken because it wasn't registering. So she goes and gets another meter and comes back, checks my sugar, and it's not registering. So then the ER doctor is there and they figure out my blood sugar is so incredibly high that it won't even register on the glucometer. That's how bad it is. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, again, I'm like, no, I was just kicked by a horse. I'm probably in trauma, whatever. decide to leave the hospital against their wishes, go home with a couple of bruised ribs, a bruised kidney, it was like totally had knocked the wind out of me. So I was obviously hurt and there was a trauma
Gosh.
response there, but it was
Right.
not, that was not the route of where it needed to go. Couple days later, fortunately, we had a doctor in the family. We drive down to Santa Monica. They put me in touch with an endocrinologist, and she's like, you may not want to hear this, but this is absolutely the truth.
Mm.
And my head is just spinning at this time. I don't know
Yeah.
what to do with this information.
Mm.
And it's so frightening. It's so scary. At the time, I'm 45 years old. At the time, I had just, a few years before had seen steel magnolias. So that's all I knew about
Oh
diabetes
my
is here I
gosh.
am. I'm going to die is really what
Oh no.
and nobody has any other way to give me information. There isn't a lot of support out there. It's
Right.
not like how it is today where there's a
Right.
lot.
You can't just go on the internet. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I'm the same age as you, so oh, we
Yeah.
get that part. Yes.
So yeah, so I'm just my head is spinning on top of being a teenager, on top of all of these things,
Oh my goodness.
it was just a mess. And it took me well into my 20s. I struggled with a eating disorder, which was I didn't want to gain weight because of the insulin. So I
Mm,
restricted my insulin, which they have titled that now dia-bulimia, so I
right.
could stay thin. So my blood sugars were chronically high consistently, not knowing any of the damage that I'm doing internally. I had no
Right.
idea because nobody's telling me because I probably wouldn't have listened anyway.
And that's the thing. I was just about to say that because when we're that age, and I think about, my daughter now, and do you have any kids?
I have three.
Okay. So yeah, you know this all too well. What ages are they?
I have almost 20, 14, and
Oh
12.
yeah, yeah. So you know this really well. But I think about her and I'm like, yeah, at that age, you don't think, I mean, even when I was 18, 19, like I didn't think that I was, you think you're
You're
invincible.
invincible. You're
Like
not gonna nothing's gonna happen. Are you
it
kidding?
doesn't, and not until you're, later on in life, you're like, dang, I really wish I would have paid more
Yes.
attention back then.
Yes. I never understood until I was this age the
Right.
expression youth is wasted on the young because it is because they don't
Yes.
understand what
I
they're
know.
doing. And
I
I'm
know.
guilty of that. I'm
Yes.
guilty of
I
that.
think all of us
So
are. Yes.
it's really crazy. And like I said, even getting into my 19s and 20s to being 20s, I didn't fully accept or understand exactly the internal damage that I was doing.
Right.
So then I went into first responder. I became an EMT, started
Okay.
to learn a little bit more, saw a lot of it was type 2, but saw sort of some of the drastic things that could happen.
Right.
All of these terror. And of course, as an EMT, you're meeting people on their worst day. So it's hard to
Yes.
sort of balance that.
Yes.
And then going that route, I decided it was really hard. I didn't like touching people, but I still wanted to help people. I know that's terrible, right? That's so terrible. But it's honesty. So I'm
That
being as
is
raw
on
as
it.
I
Yes.
can
Thank you
be.
for your transparency.
I'm being but I still had this first responder bug bite that I really
Yeah.
wanted to help people. So in
Right.
that, I became a 911 dispatcher and I was able to help people over the phone and birthed a
Hmm.
couple of babies, had a couple of heart saves.
Wow.
And so I just started learning as much as I could about actual medical things. Fast forwarding, learning that a lot of the conventional medical ways are
Hmm.
not the best practices, right? I
Yes.
will say this, and I say this on my show all the time. In this country, we have bar none the best emergency medicine that you could find anywhere. They can
Hmm.
save a life if they have the right tools in front. Like
Right.
truly, it is best. But the maintenance of medicine that we have in this country,
Yeah.
we can
I
do better.
know.
It's
Yeah.
terrible. It's terrible.
Exactly.
So because of all that damage and all of, leading up to it, I was able to have my children, but my first child, she was born 6 weeks early. I was preeclamptic.
Mm.
And I had entered into the pregnancy with an A1C over 13, which is just terrible. Luckily, I had a very strict, staunch, high risk OBGYN that was able to help me through that. But even through pregnancy, I still didn't understand what that meant. Okay, I
Yeah.
have a high A1C. Now what? What does that
So for
mean?
anybody out there, let's stop right there because I was a medical lab tech, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
For anybody that doesn't have a medical background, let's talk about like what is A1C? What is your A1C marker?
Yeah, so an A1C is usually a 90-day average of what your blood sugar has
Mhm.
been. And so I think it's now if you're really, really healthy, they want it to be like 5 to 7.
Mhm.
Anything over 7 is considered really, that's terrible.
Yeah.
Mine was 13.
Yeah.
So you can
Oof.
see, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for doing that because I
Yeah.
have to remember that sometimes because I'll talk to people all the time and especially when we're talking about medical stuff and it's like, yeah, and we're just talking and no big deal. And then you have somebody that's not medical and they're like, what are you talking about right
Yes,
now?
that's true.
Right?
That's
Like,
true. Yeah.
yeah. So
But
thank you for doing
it's
that.
one of those markers that have become, especially now in recent days, because so many more people are being diagnosed with
Right.
diabetes, one or
Yeah.
two. That's
Mhm.
really something that they're starting to just take so much more notice of.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, so I was able to be pregnant, had to have a cesarean, second child, same thing. So just all of these complications, all of this compounded into unregulated blood sugar and high stress level, right? You
Mhm.
have stress anyway. So
Yes.
now I have 2 under 2 in diapers, like all of it. Like it's just copious amounts of stress. And
Right.
I became one of those moms who I just poured everything that I had into my children. And anytime
Mm.
I took any minute for myself, I had such bad mom guilt that I
Yes.
couldn't see the balance. I couldn't see that taking care of me would be taking care of them. I couldn't
Right.
see it
Right.
until 6 days before I turned 43 years old. I had a massive heart attack.
Oh.
Talk about a wake up call.
Oh my goodness.
I actually, my oldest daughter, I attribute her to saving my life because we were living in Colorado at the time. And this is a thing for those of you I know that are in snow. A lot of snow shoveling causes heart attacks. And I wasn't
I
aware
did
of
not
that.
know that. I'm
Yes,
from Florida originally,
yeah.
born and
So
raised, and
I'm
I'm
from
back in
California.
Florida. So
I'm from California. Now we're back in California for this very
okay.
reason. But it's a true thing that if you shovel snow, there is a higher when it starts to snow, the higher risk of heart attacks come into the
That's
hospital because
interesting.
right.
Huh.
So
Okay.
I didn't know I didn't have any chest pain, jaw pain, back pain, headache, nothing. It was just like my pectoral muscles were sore, but there was
Mm,
not pain. It wasn't like
right.
I didn't even think I need to take Advil. I was still I didn't have difficulty breathing. Like I didn't have any symptoms, which is the scariest part.
That's it. It happens a lot, and it's not unless somebody goes and gets tested that they don't even know sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
So,
so
oh,
sidebar really quick. I'm a data nerd. The statistics for
I love it.
cardiovascular
We're
disease.
gonna get along great. Go ahead.
I call myself out. I
No,
just
I
am.
love it because people need that. I always tell people like, I promise you, I'm not making this up. There's research, there's data, right?
Yes.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
So 1 in 3 women will suffer some sort of cardiovascular event in their lifetime. One in
Hmm.
three. All of cardiovascular disease for women, it is the highest death rate of any cancer combined, and
Yes.
they are not talking about it. And
Yes.
this is huge. And women do not usually have the same symptoms that they talk about, the
Right.
jaw pain, the back
Hmm.
pain, they do not have those.
Right.
So that's really important. And if you think about it this way, any female over 20 years old, so all of the females 20 and older, 48% have CVD.
Hmm.
48%. That's almost half of the female population have some sort of cardiovascular disease.
Cardiovascular disease. Yeah.
It's
And a lot of it stems from stress. Like I was just saying yesterday, I was like, stress is the number one killer.
it
That
is.
and people aren't talking about. I think we're starting to do a little bit better now. I think, when people like you talk about the mental health, when I talk about the mental health, when, there's a lot more people I find now, and maybe it's because I'm in that space now,
In the
so I'm kind of
space.
paying attention a
Yes.
little bit more to that.
Yes.
But, because it's kind of your reticular activating system, you focus on what you you want to
Right.
you want to
Right.
hear. But, I really do hope that we get to a point where we can talk about this stuff even more and make it the new norm because stress is killing us and it's almost taken me down before, and not to the extent that you had, but it's just like we got to do better. We got
Yeah.
to do
No,
better.
absolutely. Well,
So
and that
how
was the
did you
thing.
find out then?
So my daughter says to me that so I shoveled the snow on a Friday. By Sunday, it was just like something's weird. There was nothing I could really pinpoint, but
It
something
went
was
2
weird.
days.
I did. So, and so my oldest, because of the history of being a type 1, she's like, mom, just go into urgent care or go to the emergency, just go get
Mhm.
checked out, make sure you're okay. And this is what she says to me, because I'd rather tell my brother and sister that you had to leave for a little bit than explain why the firemen are coming into the house getting you off the floor. That's exactly what she said to me. So as a mom, that's all I needed to
Yeah,
hear.
that's it
So
right
here
there. Oh my gosh.
I drive myself to the hospital. The whole way to the hospital, I'm saying my prayers, but the whole way to the hospital, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I think they're going to tell me, you crazy lady, you're having a panic attack. Go home. Like, I really think that they're just going to
But
send me away
it's
and reject
better to
me.
know than not know. I tell people that all the time.
Right.
I don't
Right.
care if it's something, if it's nothing. Go get
Right.
checked anyway.
Go get checked out. Go get, and if it hadn't been for her, I don't think I would have, because I wouldn't
Oh
want to
my
leave the kids and dinner
gosh.
needed to be
Right.
made and all these things needed. That's because that's what women do. We
That's
just do what needs to be
gotta
done,
take care
right?
of
And
everybody
we put
else.
ourselves, yep.
Yeah.
So enter into the hospital, not very busy. Little orderly comes out, gives me in a wheelchair, puts me back into this was triage and having the medical background. He does the EKG on me and I start to see, and instead of the numbers going like this, they were going like this.
Mm.
And kind of all the blood drains out of his face as well as my face. He disappears and comes
And he
back with like,
disappears.
yeah. And he comes back, 9 people sort of ascend on me, I had double IVs, stripping my clothes, everything. And the one lady looks at me, she's like, you are in the middle of having a massive heart attack. And it's one of
What
those
were
out
your
of,
thoughts in that moment? You were
right.
about to say outer body experience. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can only imagine.
What do I was so kind of confused and everything happened so fast.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I'm just trying to like get my words out. Of course, they're not really coming the way that I want them, but I had just
Right.
previously had my labs done, did not have high cholesterol, did not have high blood pressure. So she's telling me these things and it's like, this, you're wrong. Like something's not connecting. I don't understand.
Doesn't make sense. Yeah.
But they were like, no, we're sorry. This is what happened. So anyway, rushed to the cath lab, got a stent put in.
Oh my God.
It was just, and I was awake for the whole thing. And the nurse that was there, great nurse, great bedside manner. Everything's on my chest, my shoes, my phone, like everything's
Oh
sitting
my
there
God.
yeah. She grabs my phone and takes a before and after picture for me so I can actually see, because she knew how much in denial
Oh
I
my
was.
gosh.
Are you starting to sense a pattern? I'm just in denial all the
But I
time.
mean, it does. I think it's really normal a lot of the time for, I mean, a lot of us
Yeah,
to, like this can't really be happening,
right.
kind of thing. Yeah. And I think sometimes too, it's a survival mode tactic.
Yeah,
Our bodies just go into survival mode
right.
and there's nothing we can do about it.
And
So,
it's hard. And so I get this question all the time. Well, if you had a stent put in, then you had to have plaque in your arteries. Yes, that's correct. But the plaque was not due to cholesterol. My plaque buildup was due to years of uncontrolled blood sugar, and
right.
it compounds. And that starts to make the arteries
Mm,
harden, and that starts to
right.
make the plaque build up. And nobody in the expanse of my whole entire time, and this is even me having an ENT background and getting to learn all these things,
Mm,
nowhere is that really said. It's not talked about. What
right.
they tell you is watch your kidneys. I had
Hmm.
watched my kidneys for 25, like, yes, I'm absolutely going to make sure my kidneys are great.
Yeah.
It was never talked about your heart ever, ever. And so now I'm just trying to make sure, not only in the type 1 world, but in the female world, no
Yes.
symptoms. You have to know what is going on, because there's
Yeah.
no way to say, oh yeah, I had jaw pain, I had arm pain, I knew it was happening. No, like pay attention. And
Yeah.
then my experience, and not to sound cliche, but it was like, I was given a second chance. I need to do something with this.
Oh, no,
And
yeah, of course. That
yeah,
I mean, just from what you just explained, it's like, that is a huge wake-up call, where it's like, "Okay, that almost happened. Like, I almost wasn't here.
yeah.
So,
And
game
that is
on."
such a
Like,
that's so hard. So
yeah, I can only
taking that
imagine.
though, yeah, because I'm lying there and I'm thinking about my children, thinking
Right.
about, and right, my husband's in
Well, good on your
midair trying
daughter
to,
for saying something too, like, that's
absolutely,
wow.
absolutely. Yeah. No, and I mean, if she had not said that, I would have stayed home and cooked dinner.
Right.
Like that's what I would have done. Because again, going back to like the type 1 and with the heart attack, I didn't have anything to say. I think there's something wrong. Like there
Right.
wasn't anything to say. So it's just, it's so scary. It's so
Yeah.
scary. I don't want anybody to be put in that position.
Yeah.
But then learning on this journey, I'm now 2 years post-attack, and I'm learning that mom guilt is such a beast. And it doesn't
Yes.
have to be this big thing, just that nagging voice in the back of your head, but it becomes this beast of
Yes.
something you have to deal with.
Yeah.
And if I've learned anything, it's I'm a better mom, I'm a better person if I fill my cup first and
That's
then I
it.
go to my kids. But
Exactly.
it took a heart attack for me to learn that.
Mm,
And that's makes me so sad because I look at other women doing the exact same thing.
I know.
And that's sort of just indoctrinated into us. We're just
It is.
it really
It
is.
is. I know.
And
It's
we're
very
making
unfortunate. And that's, I
it,
mean, I had to learn it too, kind of similar. And yeah, and I think when you go through something like that, where you kind of like mine was more the mental health aspect of it, where it was like I hit rock bottom. Like I
yeah.
got really, really depressed and even suicidal. And so that was kind of my quote unquote heart attack, not really the heart attack, but that was it, right? That was my wake up call where I was like, okay, there's something I'm missing here. There's something I need to do better, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I had to start doing, where it was like, okay, self-care, right? I need to start taking care of myself. And
Well,
I would go
and
to exercise and I was eating right and stuff like that, but I had to mentally take care of myself.
yeah, yeah.
So,
But for me, the first step wasn't even self-care, it was self-love. I wasn't even doing that
yeah.
part because I was just so distracted with everything everybody else needed.
Yeah.
There was no love for myself. There was
Yeah.
nothing. And I wasn't resentful for that. That was just
Right.
what I was doing.
Right.
So that was the first step for me. And, you talk about the mental health aspect. I don't know that it was truly ever true depression, but I have had serious intrusive thoughts about what if this happens again, and the anxiety
Mm,
that builds, and just what am I doing to make sure that doesn't happen again?
right.
And noticing now, sort of having my routine. I've been weightlifting now for about a year. After my heart attack, couldn't lift 3 pounds,
Mm-hmm.
but now being able to do much better than that. But noticing
Awesome.
that my daughters are like, "Oh, mom's gonna go weightlift." Like that's cool. And
Nice.
it's like, wow, why wasn't I doing this all along? Or some sort of health,
Right.
self-care to teach them, because I don't want them to copy what I did.
Yeah. Well, you're being a good role model now, and that's what
Yeah.
matters, right?
Yeah.
And I think that and sometimes we have to be careful with that because it's like, "Dang, why wasn't I doing that?" But you can't go back in the past,
That's
right? Like,
right.
I've
Right.
definitely made my share of mistakes and I always say I'm perfectly imperfect. Like, I am always gonna be an imperfect human, mom, whatever, right?
Yep. Yep.
And so I wanna commend you though, because first off, a lot of people, women especially, need to hear what you're saying. So I'm grateful
It's
that
so
you're saying it
important.
because I say it a lot, but I always say, like, I need other voices saying it too, right? Like,
I'm trying to scream it.
yes. And so keep
I get
screaming it because
very
people
passionate
need to
about it.
hear it.
Yeah.
And you,
Yeah.
I mean, by the grace of God, you're here, right? Like that I've seen that go other ways, right? And so we have to be very careful, and I love how you brought in the self-love part too, because I'll be honest with you, I actually did the self-care part before I did the self-love part. And now I have the self-love part. But when I go to, interview clients or potential clients and things like that, now I know to ask that, like, you know, do you love yourself now?
I
Because
do.
it's not gonna matter what you look like, and I know this all too well firsthand. It's not gonna matter what you look like if you don't love yourself. You're never gonna be happy. It's
Ever.
never gonna be enough.
That's
So
right.
that's where you have to start, right? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, let's learn how to love you, right? Like love you for where you are now. And then as you evolve, you continue to love yourself and
Yep.
take care of yourself. And
Yep.
like you said, we have to fill our cup up first. I talk about that all the time. It's like we have to do that because, I know and right? Like when we're pouring from an empty cup so much,
Yeah.
you guys,
Right.
that does not end well.
No.
It
Well, no,
does
and even
not
even
end
my
well.
kids are like, "Oh, you're not as crabby as you used to be." Well, I was crabby, mom, because I wasn't loving there was nothing left to give. Now
Yeah.
I have these great endorphins flowing and I feel so much better
Yes.
about myself. And so that makes me overall just a better, I respond to
Yeah.
things differently. And so, I mean, I'd rather have, take away an hour of the day for myself to give them that
Yes.
than
Yes.
pour everything I have and they remember me as crabby
Oh.
mom. So,
I love that. And I do say that, I say that too, where I'm like, I work out for my mental health. Like, and I love that you implemented strength training because I'm very passionate about teaching women about how important strength training is, because it's
yes,
like, it's not just for muscle, right? It's
no,
like your
no,
whole body needs it. So
yeah.
I want to applaud you for, going that route. So
That was a
let's talk
long
about, oh, go
journey.
ahead.
That was a long journey. So after the heart attack, when they put me in cardiac recovery, we talk about the conventional wisdom out there.
Hmm.
They had right away, they put me on this Ornish diet. And for those who aren't familiar, it's very much a plant-based vegan diet.
Right.
Now, I've talked to many vegans and I know a lot of vegans that it has worked, that diet works for them and
Hmm.
that's fine. I'm not bashing the diet. I'm just saying
Right.
it didn't work for me. And
Hmm.
it made me so anemic to the point that they were talking a blood transfusion. It was terrible. And I felt worse. On top of, they gave me the standard American cocktail of the statin, the low blood pressure medicine, and a baby aspirin. And again, I had neither high cholesterol nor high blood pressure. So I start taking these
Goodness.
medicines, I start passing out. I can't even stand in the shower because, you get the heat with the low blood pressure. I'm going down for the count. And
Yeah.
it's like, this is not right. Start seeking functional medicine, start trying to heal myself,
Yes.
completely did a 180, started the carnivore diet, did all of these things. Now that I'm not so much carnivore based anymore, it's more whole food based now,
Yeah,
but
that's
that
good.
really changed everything,
Right.
made me stronger, healthier. Like I mentioned, I couldn't lift 3 pounds after my heart attack.
Yeah.
Now I can, much more. So my stamina's there. And that part too, I feel we're missing women who don't even have huge medical problems. You need to make sure your metabolic health and what is best for you to take. If it
Yes.
is vegan, great. My experience is not that, but I
Same.
understand those
Right.
and I think, to speak to vegans for a minute, if I can, I think it's because we have like a compound. You can stack those B vitamins and things, and they
Mhm.
can last 2, 3, 4 years in your
Right.
body. Once those start to dwindle, though, I feel, because I've talked to some vegans who have had to switch back to meat
Yes.
based because they don't have those B vitamins.
Right.
And so that's very important that
Yeah.
you need to make sure you're getting the right nutrients with whatever diet you're choosing.
Yeah. Yeah. There are a lot of nutrients. And then that's I've been a nutritionist for many years and I actually started in nutrition to get my mom off of some of her medications back in 2008. And so when you're talking about the functional medicine and things like that, yes. I took pharmacology and nutrition to learn how to, weed out some of the medications that were actually making her suicidal and not
Yeah.
doing very well, and she
Oh, I
passed
hate
away in
that.
2009, but
I'm so
ever
sorry.
since then I've been able to utilize, yeah, because unfortunately, and this came along later as my daughter got a little bit older, doctors don't learn nutrition
They
unless
get
they
an average of
go
4 hours in their
exactly.
whole medical span. They get
Yes.
an average of 4 hours.
Unless
And
they go above and beyond, and not too
yep,
many of them do, you guys.
nope, nope.
So the doctors who are giving this nutrition advice, they're going off of what they hear. They
Yeah.
don't necessarily have the expertise, and they'll admit it. I mean, her pediatrician admitted it to me that I would know more about what to do for her than she would. And she was like, "I don't know anything
That's
about
sad.
nutrition, you do."
That's
And I was just
terrible.
like, "Oh my gosh," like,
That's
because I always
terrible.
I always want to get the, that I always say like the doctor's opinion, the expert, like even when I was doing the things with my mom, it was just like I took it to her primary care doctor and I was like, "Hey, I need you to sign off on this," right? Like, so I never try to just do everything without consulting the other person, right? But when she said that, I was just like, "Okay, well, I guess I got it then," and it is very unfortunate and I hear it all the time and you're saying it right now too. And like, so be careful, you guys, when you're going to the doctor and especially if it's for a metabolic issue or something of that sort, diabetes, things like that, like we're talking about, be careful because the information they give you, unfortunately, it might not be correct.
Yeah, it's hit
So
or
do a
miss.
deep dive,
Yeah.
get other people, ask other people who are versed in nutrition, ask around and make sure you're getting the correct advice. And
Well,
like
and
you
if
said,
you
I'm
think
more of a
about
whole
it,
food now too. So
right. If you think about it, humans have been around for a really long time, right? And we've always used nutrition, food,
Mhm.
herbs, things like that to, deal with whatever was going
Right.
through. It hasn't been until modern times that we've had what I call a pill for an ill for
Yes.
everything. And
Yeah.
we just need to get away from that kind
Yeah.
of thinking because it's not sustainable and it's not good for you. I'm fortunate to say now I'm off the blood pressure medicine and the statins. Now, the
Nice.
doctors still try to push the statin on me because they keep telling me, well, it'll prevent future attacks. And that it scares me when I hear that, except
Right.
for the more rabbit holes I've gone down on the statins, the more I'm like, I don't want anything to do with that. I'll take
Yeah.
my chances.
Yeah.
And knowing that I'm supplementing with my health and my nutrition to hopefully make the changes that are happening. But
I love that.
it's just, and that the misinformation that's out there. And, then you have the American Heart Association telling you they're slapping their label on oatmeal. They're slapping their
Yes.
label on seed oils. They're slapping their label on Cheerios. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's so incorrect. I can't like, that's probably a whole other
We could
podcast.
do a whole nother nutrition podcast. Yes. And maybe we should one day because yeah, that's right up my alley. But that there is so much misinformation. And that's why I tell and it's unfortunate because a lot of people that I talk to, they come to me after they've already tried all the things, right? And I'm like, golly, I wish you'd come to me first, right?
Yep. Yep.
But everybody has to kind of learn. And I've been very stubborn in my life, so I understand, right? And so we're trying to figure it out, but there is far too much misinformation. There's far too many people out there who don't really have the correct information, but they're feeding people magic pills, which is what I call them, all these
Yep.
detox diets and things like
Yep.
that, and making a lot of money off of it, right? And it's like
Yep.
because that's the magic pill, but like you said, it's not sustainable.
Mm-mm.
It really isn't. None of it
No.
is.
And
So
the
until you learn how
risk,
to eat,
yeah, the risk far outweighs what you
the
might,
reward,
the
yes.
benefit that you may or may not get. It's
Yeah.
just, it's terrible.
That's why I
So,
tell people, I'm like, you can't just focus on what you look like on the outside. You really have to know what's going on the inside,
mhm,
you know?
yeah. And if I could just add back to just the data part, a lot of women don't realize, even if you don't have, heart disease in your family or things like that, a lot of women don't realize the compound factors for cardiovascular disease start after we get our periods and the stress that
Yeah.
accumulates. And then if you do happen to choose to take birth control, that also compounds to the
Yes.
cardiovascular disease. And I'm not
Yes.
saying I'm for or against it. I'm just saying
Right.
these are things that aren't talked about when
Right.
you're handed this medication to pay attention to and think about what is going on the inside. And I
Yeah.
just think we got to do better.
Yeah. We have to educate, and that I mean, like you're doing that right now, right? You're educating our listeners, and that is so powerful. And that's why I tell people all the time, like I will never sit here and tell you I know I have all the answers for everything,
Right.
right? But what
Right.
I do try to do as much as possible is put as much information out as I can so people can make informed decisions on their own, right? So at
Absolutely.
least if you're giving this information, somebody out there might be like, "Oh, you know what? I haven't really looked into this. Maybe I should." And they start actually looking into it and they find out like, "Oh my gosh, this isn't really what I thought it was," you know?
Absolutely.
And so I think we just have to keep doing that. We just
Yeah.
have to keep doing that. So I'm a I hate to assume, but I'm going to. I'm assuming your journey is what sparked your interest in starting your wellness
Yes.
business. Okay. 'Cause
100%.
that's usually how
Because
our
yeah,
experiences usually take us where we are, right?
absolutely. And like I said, I'm a nerd. So I did a bunch of deep dives into rabbit holes, found myself in places that I didn't maybe want to be, but I was
Hilarious.
there anyway.
I'm sure you and I could probably go on a research spree.
Yes. Yeah. That's fun to me.
I know. I tell people that. People don't believe me, but I'm like, "I research for fun." And people are like,
I
"What?
do.
That's
I
weird."
do. No, because, and I know this is just, oh my gosh, you're just saying that, but knowledge truly is power.
It
And the
is.
more power that I can take back for me, the more that I can take and be in knowing what I need to do,
Yes.
then that's where I want to be. And
Yes.
then the flip side to that, ignorance is bliss. And so, yes, I will say yes, because then you're not worrying about everything. But then one day you have a heart attack and you didn't know that it was coming. So
Oof.
Hard truths, hard
Yeah.
truths. Yeah.
Yes, yes, and you are definitely a testimony to that. You guys, I'm telling you, you have to pay attention. And I'll have people come to me for nutrition and I'll ask them when they got their labs done because I did used to be a lab tech. And so
Mhm.
especially for women, I'm like, if you haven't had your labs done, especially over a certain age, right? I always say like over 35, if you're not getting your labs done at least once a year, go do that first,
Yeah,
because a lot of times we don't understand, especially a lot of people are trying to lose weight and they don't understand their weight loss fluctuations. And sometimes it's hormonal, but sometimes it's really hormonal and it's something that we don't even know we have. I've seen
sure.
a lot
Could
of
be
people that have
thyroid.
thyroid,
Yeah.
yes.
Mhm.
And
The
so
only
it's
thing I'll say to
important.
that, and you definitely need a base starting line to see where
Hmm.
everything's at. But I will also say labs aren't everything. And what I mean by that is, again, going back to the conventional system, right? Everything's a bell curve, right?
Yes.
And so, and this is, I talk to people email me all the time. Oh, I went in to get my thyroid check, but they said it was fine, but I still check all these boxes that I haven't. And so then they're sort of gaslit because their doctor says, it's normal. I don't know what your problem is. I'm not giving you any
Mm,
medicine. You're fine. Except that bell curve on either side, they may be right next to that low mark or right
right.
next to that high mark, but they're not in the very dangerous range where now they need medicine.
Right.
That's very frustrating because
Yeah.
women are really, especially with hypothyroid and Hashimoto's, which is both what
Yes.
I suffer from, these things you can actually fix. Selenium, there's all things that you can do that
Right.
maybe put you a little bit back up into that bell curve. But again, you don't know until you get that baseline, but don't depend on that for everything.
Yes. Yeah. No, I hands down. Yes. I totally agree with you on that. But that again, it's just another one of those ways to kind of have some kind of idea of what's going
Absolutely.
on
No,
with your
it's
body,
definitely a
right?
baseline, definitely a
Yeah.
baseline.
So,
Yeah. And it's just, they're telling, I spoke to one woman and she was like, but I have brain fog and I have thinning hair and I'm like, check, 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 like all of these things.
mhm.
And so you want to screen, and no, I'm not saying that the thyroid medicine is the answer, but you think that the doctors, especially endocrinologists, would have some sort of ready to go protocol of maybe change your diet to do this so you don't have to go on the
Right.
medicine, right? Like that
Yeah.
wishful
It
thinking, I know.
we have to hope that eventually it will go. It's kind of like with the mental health thing, It's like we just have to be the voices for right now.
Yeah.
And just hope that more voices join us enough to where things can change because yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately this is the norm right now and it is really, I talk to people all the time and you do too, right? Where it's just like how is this even happening? How are we not paying attention to these things?
Yeah.
And it just does not make sense sometimes.
Right. Right.
So
But I
let's
always
go
say,
ahead.
especially when I don't like when I meet a client originally, maybe I don't know a lot and we're just getting to know each other.
Right.
I tell them a few basic things, no matter what's going on. Hydration, which is super
Mhm.
key, but hydration with water isn't enough. And here we get into that salt conversation where that's a bad word. When in actuality, if you really want to hydrate correctly, you need to be putting salt in your
Electrolytes.
water. Absolutely. You start with that. Start with the whole foods. If
Yeah.
you need to remove dairy or gluten or those kinds of things, start slowly with that and figure out, write down a food journal and
Yes.
walking.
Thank you for saying that. Tracking their
Yes.
food. I always have people track their foods. They hate it, but I'm like,
Oh,
I had to do this old school when I first started. So the fact that apps can actually scan a barcode now, it's
right.
really easy
It's
now.
really
Okay.
easy.
So I don't want to
Yeah.
hear it.
Yeah.
But I do want to say, because you mentioned the salt, it is also individual. So be careful
It
because
can be.
some people
Yes.
already have normal saline. And so we have to be careful not to tell them to,
That is true.
have more salt because then it can pump it up even more. But I've done definitely deep dives with the salt. And you guys, yes, every cell in our body does have, we have sodium, potassium pumps in every single cell of our body. So it is important to pay attention and know how much salt you have in your body to ensure that your body can operate
Yes.
correctly.
Yes. But if you have removed the sugar, having too much salt isn't going to be a problem because everything comes back down to the body having to process that sugar.
Right.
And so that's and again, I don't want to advocate, have high sodium levels,
Right.
but it's very much
We
everything
have to
points
be
to the
careful because
sugar.
you know what
Yes,
happens, right?
yes,
That
yes,
people
yes,
start pouring
yes.
salt. Well, they said pour
They
salt in my
said, well,
water.
and I'm not talking about like the McDonald's salt on the
Yeah,
French
I
fries.
know.
Okay, I'm not
No.
advocating for that. I'm talking about a very, refined ancient sea salt, those kinds
Yes.
of things. And, not the whole jar, measure it out, those types of things. But yeah,
No, but that is
I
important, and I love that you brought up that point, and I always joke around, like, when people come to me with nutrition, the first thing I have to do is help them drink more water, so
yeah,
I always say, "I'm really a water coach, I'm not really."
yeah. Yeah, it's
We'll
true.
get to the nutrition later, let's
Yeah.
work on your water intake
Yeah.
first.
Well, and I like to tell people the food journal really becomes you tracking your habits. And so
Yes,
that
thank
shows
you.
you I'm a huge habit tracker. Even if it's the littlest
Yes.
things too, I brush my teeth in the morning and I brushed it at night
Yep.
and I get to check that box. That really helps you to see what you are doing with your body, what
Yes.
you are putting into it, what's going on.
Yes.
I had some lady be like, yeah, I don't eat breakfast. I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
And then I always crash at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm like, well, let's talk about the connection there.
So I call it fuel, right? So every
Right.
time I'm working with people, I'm like, we need to know your fuel intake and we need to make sure that your fuel is optimal for your body, right? And I've done workshops in the past where I talk about it's kind of like in the past when I was in college, well, the first time I was in college, I'll say, because I'm always in school, but the first time I had a car that didn't have the gas gauge did not work. Okay. So
Okay.
I did run out of gas. So I was always like putting a couple dollars. I was a broke college student as well. So it'd be like, and
Oh,
back then
yeah.
gas was really cheap, but so you'd put like $1.50 and it would get you, a little bit, at least a day, right? A couple days.
Gosh, the days.
But I talk about that. Yeah. So, okay, good. I'm glad you relate. Um, but I talk about that in my workshops because I'm like, have you ever had a car that the gas gauge didn't work? Or what if it didn't work all of a sudden, right? And now you're guessing how much fuel you have in your car. How does that work out for you? And then what if you put unleaded in a premium or a premium, like you're supposed to have diesel and you're putting unleaded? Like what happens? You break down.
Yep.
Your
It's
car
not, you're not
breaks
going to get
down.
very
It's the
far.
same thing. Yeah, and it's interesting because when I talk about it that way, and then people are like, "Oh," right? And I'm like, "Yes, you have a fuel intake. The
Yeah.
problem is if you're not tracking your foods, you don't know what that fuel intake is, and you don't know how to reach it.
Yep. Yep.
So we're just guessing."
Back to data. Back to
Back to
data.
data, yeah. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. See, you guys, I don't make this stuff up. I promise
She
you, I don't make
doesn't.
this stuff up.
No, she doesn't. And she's not
But you
alone.
are right, it is about habits too, and, when you start and it's anything, right? Starting a business, it's the same discipline in one area has to carry over in every other area of our lives. And so it's funny too because I had this conversation the other day where I was talking to a lady and I said, "Well, what is it? Is there something that you're really good at, that you just enjoy doing?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm creative. I love to make crafts and things." And I said, "Well, are you disciplined in that area?" And she was like, "Not really." And I said, "See?" I was like, "So that's showing a pattern." Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if we start looking at the areas of our lives and none of us are all in on every single area, right? But
No,
what if we
absolutely.
can
Absolutely.
balance it out in each area,
Yeah.
and
That's
just
the goal.
implement
Yeah.
the habits in the place that we're really good at, bring that over. When I talk to financial people, I'm like, "Don't you track your money?"
How else do you know what's going on?
And it's funny because I had a financial person do that to me a few years back. About 5 years ago, I had a woman in the financial industry, she was helping me, and she said, "Jody, you have people track their foods all the time. Do you ever track your money during the day?" And I was like,
Ouch.
"No."
We're not gonna talk about that.
I was so guilty, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh." And she's so right, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so it is about just learning like, okay, if I'm disciplined in this area, how can I move this over in this area? And just staying the course and not quitting is the
Yeah.
big thing too,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and if it's okay with you, let's talk about the difference really quick. Motivation and self-discipline, right?
Yes.
We always talk about that on the podcast. Motivation is great. It feels good,
Yes.
but it's not sustaining. It only gets you so far.
Exactly.
Self-discipline is what picks up after that motivation peters out basically, right?
Right.
But to get that self-discipline is by having 1% growth in the habits that you're tracking, because then it starts to
Yes.
become automatic. But if you don't have that, if you don't even know where you're supposed to be doing what you're, and I know it sounds so silly, oh, you're tracking that you brush your teeth. Hey, I am a big box checker. And if that means I get to pat myself on the
You
back
feel
and
good. That's
I feel good, I
awesome.
get that, endorphin hit of, hey, I did
Yes.
something. Like, if that's what it takes for you to start getting into the momentum, that is what the self-discipline is, right?
Yes.
And I'll take it one further. I had this fitness guru, he's a super great guy on my show. And he put it to me like this: you have a child, they're at school, it's pouring rain, you have to go pick up your child at school. Is that motivation or self-discipline? No, that's knowing you have to go do this. That's love for your child. Have the same self-love for yourself.
Oh my
And there you
goodness.
go.
That's
Yeah.
good. That is good. And that's usually the problem though, right? It's
Yeah.
most of us don't have the self-love.
Yeah.
We love on everybody else and we make sure everybody else is taken care of. And, a lot of it can stem from our upbringing. Like I always say, I
Sure.
was the protector person, right? Like I always
Sure.
had to make sure everybody else was good. And so I've just evolved into that, right? And so in that, I also have to remember, well, I have to protect me too.
Mhm.
And that's what happens. I think we tend to take care and protect everyone else, make sure everyone else is good, but it's
Because we've
like, "Okay,
learned to
but who's
live on so
protecting us?"
little. Yeah,
Right.
we've learned to live with so little, survive like so little. And yeah, I don't know about you. I don't need a whole lot, but
Mhm.
that doesn't mean I shouldn't have more of what I need,
Exactly.
right? That's the thing.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
self-discipline is the best form of self-love, because
Yes.
you're putting that is going back into you. You're putting that energy back into you, and that's how you
Yeah.
create that self-discipline.
Yeah.
So,
That's why I ask people all the time. I'm like, you make commitments to everyone else, right? Like you always say, "Yeah, I'll be there. I'll help you out, whatever." And I'm like, "How often do you make commitments to yourself and then keep them?" And a
exactly.
lot of people are like, "Ooh," right? And
Yeah.
a lot of times we will literally get rid of our commitments in order to show up for other
To show,
people.
yep.
And
Yep.
it's like, "No, but you have to, take care of you too. You have
You
to
have to
you have
believe
to
you're
commit to
worth
yourself."
it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That right there.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yeah, we could talk about that all day.
We
But
can.
I want to transition a little bit. Okay, so we're
Sure.
going to transition a little bit. So what made you name your business
Everything's messy
Everything's messy because
because
I
it
love it, but
is.
I want
It
yes, thank
is.
you.
So I always say, I'm not the before picture and I'm certainly not the after picture. I'm the little space in between. And that space is messy. That is so messy,
Mm,
right? If it's a black
I
line, whatever,
love that.
separating the two pictures, that's where I'm at right now.
Yes.
The goal, obviously, eventually is to get to that after picture. But right
Mhm.
now, it's messy. I'm figuring it
Yes.
out. I'm doing what I can with tracking the habits and,
Yes.
learning the fitness and all that kind of stuff. But, I did an episode a while ago crying in the gym. That was me. I literally
I've done
broke
it.
down crying in the gym. Of course, the male people in my family were like, "Really? You cried at the gym?" Yes, you don't understand. That's a
I've
real
I've
thing.
broken down before in the gym too. And I think but that says a lot about your journey of being authentic too and being able to be vulnerable, because there was a time where I would never have done that. And
Yeah,
it hasn't
right.
been until the
Right. Because 'cause
last
we're so
like
worried what other people are gonna think of us,
exactly.
and I will tell you, a few of the men in the gym were just like, "She okay? Is she
That's
hurt?"
funny.
Like, they're afraid to, like, get close.
I think
But
but you know what? Like when people are going through so and yeah, like the guys sometimes they don't get it, but there are some that do, right? Because
yeah,
they're going
yeah,
through their own stuff. And I think
yeah,
that's just the difference of being empathetic and then not understanding, right? Because
yeah,
people who haven't been on that journey or haven't really resolved their issues and things that maybe some childhood trauma and things like that, if they haven't gone on that journey, they're not going to be empathetic to what
right.
you're feeling at that time, right? So
Yeah,
good on you for being able to show that. And I love that cuz I'll post videos of like, yeah, I'm falling apart right now, right? And we need to be doing that too because, and you have kids too and they have to see that life is messy.
absolutely. And how are you as their role model handling it? So when they grow up and you're not there to keep them in the bubble and protect them, how are they going to handle the mess? Because
Exactly.
none of us are not going to experience something like that was sort of a double negative, but
Right. I know what you mean though.
we're going to
We're
experience
always going to
something one
experience
way or
something. Yes.
another, and it is messy. How do you
Yes.
handle it? Right.
Yeah.
And I always ask the people that come on the show, how did you find your strength through that mess? Because that's what comes out of it, or at least that's
Right.
what you hope it comes out of it.
Right.
And lean into that, hold it. I always tell people, when it's messy, sit in that
Yes.
moment. Don't distract yourself. Don't
Yeah.
invalidate it. Sit in that so you can process it. And then it starts to become clearer so you can see what you need to do through the mess.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's the important part. I don't
Yeah.
want to be a victim of my circumstances. I don't want to sit. Now, again, sometimes we have to sit in it. Sometimes you just have to be
Yeah.
sad or angry or frustrated
Mm-hmm.
and go through those emotions, ride that wave. Do
Yes.
not, under any circumstances, be like, oh, it's not a big deal, or oh, I'm such a drama queen. Be the drama queen for a minute.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Well, I think a lot of that is our upbringing, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but like, I know my upbringing, that was, you didn't talk about stuff.
You didn't
You
talk
didn't
about
talk
it.
about stuff. And then I
Rub
went in
some
the
dirt on it, is
military,
what.
I went in the military and then it was just like, and I talked to a lot of veterans and, it's, we just, we really, the whole concept of shut up and color, like that was literally my whole upbringing up.
Hmm.
And I went in the military and it was the same thing. Right. And so it wasn't until after that. So we have to get to a point where it's just like, okay, I don't have to shut up and color anymore.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
I can
Exactly.
feel this, and I know now that compartmentalizing and suppressing is not the antidote.
It's only going to cause more stress.
Yes.
We need to get rid of
Stress,
it.
depression, anxiety,
Yeah, yeah,
and even with what you said earlier about, with you going through your heart attack and things like that is a traumatic event,
yep.
So when you revisit that, that's PTSD.
It very
And
much
that's and we
so.
tend to dismiss that, and I was the same. I had a therapist who she was like, "You've been through all these things. You have
Take a
PTSD, you have
moment.
complex
Yeah.
PTSD, and allow yourself to feel it." And I was like, "But I thought PTSD was like if I went to war and I got shot or my leg got shot off or something."
No,
No.
no, no. And it's so real. And I think as women too, because we feel like, at least some of us, I know I can say for me, we
Mhm.
feel like we've got something to prove, so we have to look strong all the time. don't
Yes.
don't mistake emotions for weakness.
Yes.
That doesn't
Thank
mean you're
you.
weak.
Yes.
We're strong AF, but
Yes.
it's okay to feel. It's okay to be
Yes.
vulnerable. It's okay to be raw. The
Yeah.
question is, what do you do with that? How do you
That.
That's the biggest part.
Yeah, that's the part, and definitely I wanna commend you for being able to take
Mm.
your mess and not only applying it to, applying what you're saying to your own life, but also being able to help other people, because I always say, like, it's funny, I'll tell my clients all the time, or even I'll say it on videos all the time where I'm like, "I'm coaching me, y'all just get the benefit."
Yeah, exactly.
Like, these are really reminders for
It's just
myself.
telling myself what I oh, go
So,
drink more salt water. Okay, got
as
it.
I'm telling me, I'm just gonna share it with you too, because there's probably somebody out there who needs to hear it, right?
Yes,
And
exactly.
I wanna commend you for being another person that did, and that's why I love the beauty of collaboration, it's like, there's never a competition in this. We all should be
No, gosh,
collaborating, we should
no.
always be coming together, and our voices get louder when we come together, and we're, just at the end of the day, if we're truly genuinely helping people, like, that's just beautiful. Beautiful.
Absolutely. And I truly do think there is a desire. People want to know.
Yes.
People, there is and because I've been told, oh, well, it's so saturated the market. What, you really think you're going to do any good? There's enough people for everybody.
Thank
And
you.
what I have found in the wellness space is the true genuineness of everybody truly wanting to help people. I have not experienced people stepping on other people or trying to
Mm-mm.
railroad. Like that not has not been my experience, because I
Yeah.
really do think we all have this mess. Now we've learned something, we want to scream it from the rooftops, and we just want to pull everybody up with us. That's all we want to
Yes.
do. So,
Yes, I love that. That's why I tell people, like, I don't wanna go up by myself. Come on,
mm-mm.
people. Come on.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, so I
There's
definitely
enough
wanna
room
commend
up
you for
here
all
for
that.
everybody.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I love that. I love that. And I love the fact that you're saying all this because, it is so true. There are now I will say in the fitness industry, because I've been in it in a long time, there are some people who don't operate like that. And that was
Mm,
actually what I was around for a really long time. And it wasn't until like the past probably 3 years that I really got around, more abundance mindsets where it was like, no, that like that's a scarcity mindset. That
Yeah.
is a really scarcity mindset. When you think that you have to compete with me, when
Yeah.
really we
No.
can really help a lot more people. And I always say, like, I'm not the person for everyone anyway, right? Like,
Sure.
some people
Some
don't
people
like the
you
way
just
I coach, right?
yeah,
Like,
absolutely. Some people you just don't vibe with, and that's okay.
exactly,
That's okay. That's why they're
exactly.
take your pick. Figure out what you
Yes.
need. Like that's
So
okay, and
that's
that's
why I love
okay.
being able to, collaborate because I'm like, okay, well, I don't think we're a good fit, but I do know somebody else who, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
and so I love
Exactly.
that. So let's talk a little bit about, your business, what you do, how people can reach out to you and contact you. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So on Instagram, it's Everything's Messy Wellness.
Hmm.
I do have a website. It's Everything's Messy, but it will be changing to Everything's Messy Wellness. So
Okay.
sort of rebranding like we talked about before you
Yes.
hit
Hey, shift,
record.
ebbs
Yep.
and flows. That's
Yeah,
what we have to do in
exactly. It's
life.
ever
Yep.
evolving.
Business is
And
no different.
the wellness part for the coaching, I'm open to anybody. You can book a 15-minute discovery call with me. You figure out if you like me, if
Right.
we could vibe, whatever. Just my email, sarah@everythingsmessy.com. You can find me anywhere. But I do say my wellness journey is still new. So I
Hmm.
understand if people are sort of, apprehensive to work with somebody so new. My key audience right now has been newly type 1 diagnosed
Mm,
patients and their families.
I
Because
love
if I
that.
can say anything, this is my own experience, my family was not even given a pamphlet of anything to be like, here, figure it,
Oh my
like
goodness.
nothing.
Yeah.
So I want to, and it has to be a family endeavor, especially if you're dealing with somebody that's much younger, that doesn't, a lot of babies are diagnosed, and the moms and
Right.
dads are like, I just don't know what to
I
do.
don't know what to do. Yeah.
I want to help you with that. I want to be there. I will hold your hand along the way. And
Mm,
other things like even younger adults who grow up and like we're in the position that I was, still didn't know anything.
right.
We have to learn to prepare for a crisis. We have to learn to have the stuff on hand that you need, the ways to do that. What
Yes.
can, you use in case you don't have something like that. So I try to take those under my wing, and I really just again want to get that information out, and then slowly transitioning into women. And if they want help with their wellness, their nutrition, obviously the heart stuff, I'm
Right.
really trying to build upon that. So
I
I
love
would
it.
love to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
Obviously, as you can tell, I'm a talker, so
Yeah. No, that's great. And hopefully we can do some collaborating later
I
on
would love
too.
that.
Cause
I would
I
love
mean,
for you to
I
come on
love
my
your
show.
spirit. Definitely, and that is a big thing with, especially with diabetes around this country and worldwide, really. And type 1 isn't something that it comes from eating, overeating and things like
Right.
that. So a lot of people
Right.
don't even know how to deal with it. So
Yeah.
I love that you kind of took your journey. And I have a good friend of mine, mentor and coach, and he's always like, our stories, our experiences are what make us,
Yep.
and if you
That's
think about it, I
absolutely
think most of us that are in this space and actually in just about any space, it's due to our experiences.
life
Something
experience. Yeah.
something didn't mesh right,
Yep.
and it
I mean, you
forced
can go to
us.
school and get degrees for fitness and
Yes.
nutrition and kinesiology, and that's great and that's good knowledge.
Yes.
But if you don't have any personal experience to fall back on why it's important, that may
Exactly.
not be as, passionate or compassionate as you can be when you're working with others who have. So,
Right, right. That's why I tell people. I was just saying yesterday, I had someone that I was talking to, and I was like, "Yeah, I normally help people with post-op because I had 5 surgeries before I became a personal trainer." And the reason I did that is because I was like, "Okay, I need to figure out what to do after physical therapy."
absolutely.
You know,
People don't
and
talk about that.
and
People
that's the
don't say,
thing. Yeah.
when you get home from the hospital, now what? Like you need to figure that. Yeah, no, it's
Yeah,
terrible.
yeah, and it has to
Mhm.
be an ongoing thing, and that's one thing that I can definitely speak on a lot because, I've had a lot of chronic pain, injuries, things like that, bulging discs, all the things, right? And so people are like, "Well, how are you even doing it?" I'm like, "I just didn't quit." That was the
Yeah.
difference. I did have
Yeah.
to start over, like you said, I've had 2 wrist surgeries. Yeah, I couldn't lift 3 pounds, right? Like, I get that part, but it's not about quitting, it's about, "Okay, this is where I am right now.
Always meeting
Let's."
yourself where you're at. And
Yes.
if that just looks
Yes.
like taking a walk every day, then that's what it looks like. There is
Exactly.
no shame, there is no competition,
Exactly.
it's just taking that first step, which is the
Yes.
hardest. That's it. Meet
That
yourself
is.
where you're at.
Yes, definitely. Sarah, you have been an absolute pleasure to talk
Thank
with.
you. You
Definitely
too.
hope to collaborate on some other things later
Yes,
on, even if it
100%.
I hope it goes past podcasts. But
Yeah, absolutely.
just because I love to keep, just like-minded people around me, and I love your spirit. Tell your
You as
daughter
well. You
thank
as
you for
well.
being her
I
because
will. I tell her that a
she
lot.
kept you here. Yes. So definitely commend her for paying attention, because
Yes.
that says a lot about her and you as a mom.
Thank you.
When our
Thank you.
kids are actually paying attention and being that voice of being, being willing to speak up, like you said, that's huge. And that
Yeah.
speaks volumes of you too. So
Yeah.
keep
Thank you.
doing what you're doing. Keep
You
being
as well.
amazing.
You as well.
Thank you.
People
Thank you.
listen. She's not alone. Listen to her.
I don't make it up. I promise. See?
She's not. Yeah.
I get so happy when other people start talking about similar things and I'm like, yeah,
Yes,
see? I promise I don't make it up.
for sure.
Oh my goodness. Do you have any last parting I always say like the mic drop. Do you have like a last little tidbit nugget you want to leave with anybody?
Probably just like I said, meet yourself where you're at. Truly, no pressure. Don't be overwhelmed. Start with one thing. If it's
Yes.
metabolic health, if it's nutrition, if it's wellness, whatever, don't put all of that on your plate at one time. That's going to
Yes.
completely overwhelm you.
Yes.
One step, one thing that will get you on your journey.
I love it. I love it. I have a good friend. He says one toe at a time. Like we
Yeah,
don't even say feet. We don't even say the whole foot because sometimes
uh,
that can be daunting. But
absolutely. It is.
one toe at a
Yes.
time, you guys.
One toe at a time. I
All
love
right,
that.
everybody. Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you for taking the
Thank
time
you,
out today. I
Jody.
really appreciate you. You
So
guys, this has
great.
been another episode of the Now Jody Watkins Show. Make sure you tune in, go subscribe to the Jody Watkins Inspires YouTube channel. Make sure you go follow Sarah on all of her pages and go to her website, check her out. And if anything, just stay encouraged. And that's one thing a lot of people don't understand on this entrepreneurial journey. We need encouragement too. So let's keep encouraging each other. Let's keep supporting each other, and we all go up together. So thank you again,
Thanks,
Sarah, and
Jody.
thanks
This has
to
been
everybody who's
great.
listening. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. All right, everybody, stay blessed.